Welcome to the first episode of Know Your Body, Control Your Own Health podcast. This is our public service podcast created and made for the students of Purdue University and beyond to spread awareness and education on the aspects of cervical cancer. I am your host, Audrey, and our guest today is Gracie. Gracie, how are you?
I'm doing good today. Thank you for having me.
Of course. To begin our podcast series, let's talk about why we should be spreading information on cervical cancer. Cervical cancer is a unique type of cancer in that it can only be caught early on if you engage in recommended periodic screening, which is supposed to start in one's early 20s. However, many individuals report being overdue for cervical cancer screenings. In fact, according to one source, the National Cancer Institute, 23% of women in the U.S. are late to being screened for cervical cancer. Given the large percentage of women who are late to being screened and the apparent drop in testing initiatives in the U.S., it is not difficult to imagine why there was time to identify cervical cancer has lengthened. This is the purpose of our public health campaign, Know Your Body, Control Your Own Health. Our goal is to empower college-age students who identify as any gender, but predominantly those who have female genitalia, such as a vagina and a uterus, to become more educated on the causes, symptoms, and signs, types, and screening available for cervical cancer. Know Your Body, Control Your Own Health is a movement to protect your health and become more informed.
This is such a great movement, and I am so excited to learn more about it today.
Today, we are going to focus on the causes and signs of cervical cancer. Gracie, what do you know about the causes and signs of cervical cancer?
I don't know a lot about it. I just know the basics.
Okay, then let's dive more into it. Cervical cancer describes the condition where cells grow uncontrollably. This type of cancer refers to where growth begins, and in that case, cervical cancer, growth begins in cells in the cervix. The main cause of uncontrollable growth in the cervix is human papillary virus, or HPV. HPV is a common virus that is passed from one person to another during sexual intercourse and skin-to-skin genitalia contact. Reportedly, 50% of people engaging in sexual activities will have HPV at some point in their lives. But getting HPV does not automatically indicate an individual will have cervical cancer. There are many types of HPV, and they can all function very differently. Some will create changes in the cervix that over time have the potential to become cervical cancer. Other types of HPV can result in genitalia or skin warts. So I have a question for you, Gracie. Do you know how many strands of HPV there are?
I am not sure, but maybe like 50?
I think most people would probably say that, but the answer is actually over 200. Again, I want to reiterate that HPV is a very common infection. Some individuals will have no symptoms, and HPV will go away on its own. However, in the cases where HPV does not go away, it can become a long-lasting infection, and cervical cancer incidence increases with these long-lasting infections. Even though long-lasting HPV infections are associated with cervical cancer, other health behaviors such as smoking, tobacco, can also increase one's risk of developing cervical cancer. To support your health, it's recommended to get the HPV vaccine. This often occurs between the ages of 9 and 26. Becoming vaccinated will help your body fight off HPV if it does come into contact with it, and it prevents those long-lasting infections. So I have another quiz for you. How many shots does one need to get to be fully vaccinated against HPV? A, 1, B, 2, C, 3, or D, 4?
I believe it's 3. Is this correct? Can you please do a little recap for me?
That is correct. And of course, I'd love to do a recap for you. So far, we've talked about the fact that cervical cancer is preventable and that many women are late to getting cervical cancer screenings. And the risk factors associated with getting cervical cancer in the future, as well as mainly HPV and other health behavior activities like smoking. Now that we've talked about those things, let's talk about the symptoms of cervical cancer. Again, this form of cancer will most often be caught through screening, but it is important that if it's not caught in screening and individuals are late for screening, that they should know the signs of cervical cancer. Cervical cancer often begins without any presenting symptoms. Again, this reinforces the importance of taking steps to protect your health. When caught in these early stages, individuals are more likely to recover from cervical cancer. But as the cancer advances, individuals may experience vaginal bleeding, at abnormal times. This can include during intercourse, after intercourse, between periods, or after menopause. And menstrual bleeding might get heavier or last longer than usual. Separately from this bleeding, vaginal discharge may have blood in it, and it can be watery, heavy, or have a foul odor. Lastly, the individual may experience pelvic pain during intercourse. Now, experiencing any of these symptoms may make people feel fear and uncertainty, but you are not alone in this fear. Gracie, can you relate?
Yeah, of course. I have definitely experienced this type of fear before in my life. It's just really scary when you notice a symptom such as like missing a period or bleeding super heavily, or maybe even missing not bleeding normally, and then you just sort of assume the worst.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can really jump into assuming the worst when these things happen. If you're experiencing any of these symptoms, always consult a physician, nurse practitioner, or a health practitioner. Your symptoms may not be the result of cervical cancer, but they may be a result of something else, and the best practice is to talk to an expert and find some answers together. Again, you are not alone in this fear, and health practitioners are here to support you and your health. In a survey we sent out to the Purdue community, close to 33% of responders said that they did not feel confident in their knowledge of cervical cancer, and close to 40% said that they only slightly felt confident in their knowledge of cervical cancer. We cannot generalize this knowledge to the whole campus community, but using numbers, we are able to infer that more work must be done to spread the knowledge of cervical cancer. Some campus resources are available to students. First, there's PUSH, the Purdue University Student Health Services. There's a gynecology and sexual health clinic that can help individuals get STI Pap screenings and Pap smears. And additionally, for those looking for community and more education, the Purdue Period Project is a feminist club that supports the spreading of knowledge relating to female reproduction. Gracie, thank you so much for joining me today.
It was so great to be here, and I have learned so much, so thank you for having me.
Yes. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for our next episode covering all things Pap smears and screenings. The information included today has been sourced from the CDC, Mayo Clinic, the Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and the National Cancer Institute.